Hi, everybody. My name is Josh Slusher. It's a mouthful, yes, Josh Slusher. Director for Philanthropic Initiatives at the United Nations Foundation, where I run a grant portfolio focused on funding feminist organizations, largely in the Global South. That's part of 50% of my work, and then the other 50% is running a council of female heads of state, philanthropists, and CEOs doing advocacy work on behalf of the UN Foundation. Before that, I ran another council called the Global Entrepreneurs Council, which was also a group of CEOs, philanthropists, and former heads of state, also doing advocacy work at the UN Foundation. And then prior to that, I worked in communications for a large global affairs organization. Mistakes and lessons learned. I mean, I think philanthropy is pretty complicated. It's not easy to give out money. It's a lot more difficult. And I started my career in communications. I had no intention of getting into philanthropy. It just kind of happened. But I'm so glad. I didn't enjoy working in comms. It wasn't really my thing. It was kind of PR. But I realized I learned so many skills from that. The importance of communicating with grantees and transparency and having really authentic relationships with your grantees really matters, and you can make a big difference. And I think when I first started into it, there was just the recognition that communications matters, and kind of having those authentic relationships and building those relationships. And it takes a lot of work. It's not easy. I don't have a good answer for that. I just randomly applied for a job. No, I mean, I was coming out of grad school, and I, had saw this job posted with the UN Foundation. I happened to have known somebody who worked there at a time, and forwarded my application to the COO at the time, and it just kind of, I really did just kind of land into it. And I realized as I got into the role, how much I loved it. I just genuinely, it was the first, I had a couple other jobs before, and I just, once something clicks, you realize how you thrive in it. You just wake up every day and I genuinely love my job. I love the people I work with. I love my boss. I love our senior leadership. And not a lot of people can say that. That's very much true, but it really does drive me. So I just feel really lucky. Well, I think there are a lot of challenges, but I think there are a lot of challenges ahead. Thank you. I was how do I put this down? I will be fascinated what philanthropy looks like in the next 20 years, right? There are just a lot of conversations being had in the space on equity and power and democratization of philanthropy, right? There is such an amount of vast wealth. And what does it look like for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to be granting, all of these ultra high net worth individuals who hold a lot of wealth, and who are investing in things that traditionally, one of the sessions I listened into earlier was talking a lot about, the role of government. Some of these things that, nonprofits are stepping into are, traditionally in years past were really the role of government, whether at the state level, local level, or federal. And I think, over the last 40 years, globally, really, you've seen governments take a step back of basic public services, and philanthropists are asking themselves, is it our job to fill in here when there might be a lot of wealth there, but there's not enough to, we're passing trillions of dollars right now. And so, philanthropy can't fill that totally, but it's, I just think there's going to be a lot in the next 15, 20 years that's going to change in the space, and which I actually think is really exciting. I think it'll be just an interesting time to observe it. I think, two topics in philanthropy or two issues in philanthropy that I see that are going to be front and center are definitely climate, and particularly with emerging next gen philanthropists, and I think gender equality. 1.6% of all philanthropic capital that goes to nonprofits right now goes to women's organizations. Like 1.6. That is like really measly, but there is like, and that is increasingly being talked about, and I think it needs to be talked about more. So, well, I would challenge you a little bit in that there have been like major gains in a lot of social, issues, right? Or even like global health. You take polio, for example. Like
Sure.
the Gates Foundation, can be is really directly responsible for almost the entire elimination of polio in the world. Like that's a big deal, and that is has taken time and money, and a lot of people have worked on that.
Absolutely.
Another, like, to pick up on that, one of the other things that I think is interesting is like the difference in cultures of philanthropy or cultures around the world and how they view philanthropy. I mean, the United States is really unique in philanthropy. I mean, the reason why we're talking, you said 300 billion or something, like, I mean, that's not the same in a lot of other places. Europe does not have that kind of culture of philanthropy. You look at countries where the wealth gap is a lot smaller. Let's take Sweden for example. Like they just don't have that culture of philanthropy because the state provides, and I'm again probably going into my own politics, but it is interesting to look at country by country, what their philanthropic sector looks like, and it's very different than the United States largely.